Happening, everybody? MG here, MGCovers, bringing you a brand new sports handicapping video. In this video, we're going to preview the 4 college football matchups for this weekend. I'm going to show you my lines. We're also going to compare that to the sportsbook lines, give you some really good tips for college football handicapping this year for 2024. That being said, if you're watching this video for the first time, greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Put out a ton of content related to sports handicapping. If you want to get better at this business, you can subscribe to the channel and watch a ton of content. Also, if you follow me on Instagrams, MGCovers, cover spelled with a Z, give out a ton of content there as well. We have something called Free Fridays. I give out all my lines for all sports on Friday. And then also, too, we do Thursday nights a UFC free pick. You can see that now on my Instagram page, and there is a link in the description of this video to follow me there. So you get a ton of value simply by following me on Instagram. Let's dive into it. Super excited to college football season is here. And so what I'm going to do briefly, this will be a really short video, but a ton of value. I'm going to talk about the sportsbook line, talk about my model some, and then give you a really good idea of how sportsbooks set their lines early in the season. And we'll go ahead and start. Florida State, Georgia Tech. You can see my line is -10 Florida State. The books have that line very similar. This line opened at -12.5 Florida State. It has moved in favor of Georgia Tech down to 10.5 at the majority of books. In this game we're going to focus on next, Montana State, an FCS school, is -14 at some books. I think Pinnacle has it at -13. Just the opposite with my model. We have New Mexico as the favorite, -13. So we have a lot of value there with New Mexico. Next, SMU is +3. Nevada -3 via my model. We have SMU via the books line -24.5. And then finally, Delaware State at +14. My line, Hawaii -14. My line, and of course Hawaii is huge favorites via the book at -40 to -38.5. Okay, early in the season, the sports books and even sharps and everybody that wagers on college football, we have very limited data. So what do we have? We know what the rosters are, we know who the transfers are, and we know what that team did last year. So the majority of how the lines are constructed is based on last year's team and trying to factor out the impact that these new players might have, if there's any coaching changes, as well as the market's perceived value of that team. Florida State is ranked 10th this year. They're coming off a really good season last year. They only lost 1 game, so obviously they're the favorite here. You slide down to SMU. SMU, huge favorites. I think they went, 10-3, 9-3, something last year. Nevada's a complete rebuild. So easy to see how the line is constructed that way. But it's important to understand that because obviously there's bias factored into that as well. Now, a couple things. There's no value for me looking at my model, FSU, Georgia Tech, so that's going to be a pass. SMU, Nevada, obviously we have some value there, but the way that I construct my model, there's a lot of subjectivity factored into it, which means I don't have, just like the books, I don't have any statistical data, and this is a relatively new model, something I came up with last year. Did have some success, but I didn't really wager first couple of weeks of the season. So again, this is new for me. And what I mean by a subjective model, an objective model is when you're using statistics only. But since we don't have any, you have to use a lot of subjective factors. So I will pass on that game. Delaware State, Hawaii, again, same deal there. One important tip to understand about college football and give it to you now, it is very difficult to beat a team by more than 3 touchdowns. So generally those lines, 21.5, you want to pay attention to. I feel like Hawaii, this should be a blowout, but that is a pretty significant number to cover, as well as SMU on the road with that one. So when you're handicapping college football this year, always look for the 21.5 numbers, any number above 21.5. Because at that point, they got to win by basically four possessions. They got to either 3 touchdowns and a field goal or 4 touchdowns. So the game that I think that where we see the most value is going to be this Montana State, New Mexico matchup. So again, my line is -13 for New Mexico. Montana State is +13. This is the I believe, second largest. No, maybe that was Nevada. I'm sorry. I think Nevada spread was the second largest time they've been a dog at home in their history. All right, so going back to Montana State, New Mexico. New Mexico won 2 games last year. That's it. You had Montana State, I believe they went 8-4, so a lot of the bias factored into this line is based on that. However, I want to point out some interesting points about New Mexico State, and this factored in to my line as well. New Mexico State has 10 D1 transfers on the offensive line, and a lot of these transfers are not like from small schools. I mean from decent schools. I think I read where they had a player from TCU. So Bronco Mendenhall is their new head coach. You might remember that name out in the West. He was the head coach for BYU, had a couple years really good. I think they went 11-2. He was basically average at Virginia, but the guy knows how to win. I'm 100% sure they're going to win more than 2 games this year. So this is sort of a rebuild. And when you have that much talent and you look at comparing the talent that New Mexico has with all these D1 transfers coming in, at the end of the day, Montana State is still an FCS school. So there's we have a talent discrepancy there. I really believe if you matched up player per player, I believe New Mexico would have, quote, the more talented players. How that will translate into the game, obviously, we're just, again, taking as many subjective factors that we can to try to come up with a line. One important note to note about college football, home teams win 70% of the time in college football. Away teams win 30%. So it is very difficult for away teams to win in college football. And notice I didn't say cover, right? Because when you talk about covering, that's a whole different ballgame. I didn't say that home teams cover 70% of the time. I said they win 70% of the time. Because a lot of times what the books know this too, they'll shade the lines towards the home side. In a lot of cases, you'll get a lot of value simply by playing that away team, taking the points, or they might be a big favorite at home, but the fact that they're away might be a small favorite and get value that way. But the way I look at this Montana State, New Mexico game, I think that is a lot of points for an FCS school having to play their very first game on the road, New Mexico, with a lot of Division I players. So, and especially if you can get this line to 2 touchdowns and you could push, and let's take a look at that. You could push at, and I'm at Bookmakers Review. So BetOnline has it at 14, Heritage 13. You get sports betting, relatively new book, minus 14. Pinnacle has it at minus 13.5. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to this line closer to kickoff. You do have sharp movement with regards to college football. Not sure how sharp it will be this early in the season, but my prediction is I do believe that line's going to come back in favor of New Mexico, especially if it gets pushed up to basically where it is. Maybe a couple other books push that to 14. I think you'll see that line come back down. Maybe the sharps play it at 14, and that pushes it down to the 13.5. But based on what we're seeing here so far, a ton of D1 transfers. Bronco Mendenhall will definitely, I mean, this isn't his first rodeo. He's an experienced coach. I think Montana State might struggle a little bit on the road. There'll be a lot of excitement for New Mexico simply because this is the first game, brand new coach, a lot of excitement, and I would not be surprised if New Mexico could somehow win this game outright. And again, you'll see big upsets like this in college football. Again, home teams win 70% of the time. My South Carolina Gamecocks, I remember 2 years ago, Texas A&M came in to South Carolina. They were 21-point favorites. South Carolina won them. That cashed on the money line at like plus 500, plus 600. So you'll have huge dogs win at home on the road. So not 100% sure that I'm going to play New Mexico, but that's definitely a lean for me. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you want access to all my lines for all sports, including Major League Baseball right now. We crossed over to 50 units, had a little bit of regression down to 47 now. You get access to that as well as all my college football lines and NFL starting on week 4. There's a link to join in the description box. Hope you like this video. Go to Mexico, and talk to you guys soon. Peace.